I'm sure you're familiar that research has suggested that study strategy is the most effective way to boost your memory for your exam performance. And that got me curious. How many study strategies are there, and which ones would net the best possible outcome? Now, to answer that question, I employed a rather scientific process of trying to document all of the study strategies and then to arrange them in a sense of a chronological order to figure out, well, which ones are the best and which ones maybe don't work so well. And then from that list, surely if you look at maybe the top 10, you'd have the ultimate combination of study strategies, which should allow you to conquer the forgetting curve. And sure enough, I completed the list. By my count, there's over 150 strategies without getting overly technical and including certain duplicates. But out of the 150, once I found the top 10, the result was underwhelming because those were strategies I had already used and well, they'd not conferred near perfect memory. So surely there's something else. AI gives us the benchmark. It can attain near perfect memory, but it's not really fair because we're not computers and we shouldn't really have to compete with computer hardware. The joys of silicon. We're carbon-based life forms. We can't compete with silicon. At least not in that way, but thinking we're pretty sharp. That put me onto the drawing board. I had to come up with a strategy, a new strategy, something that is unlike any other study strategy, to try and find a way to effectively memorize. And again, the goal here is to trump the forgetting curve. Is it possible? This technique is really a product of many years of my own learning journey, and I guess this is the tip of the mountain for now, but even then I will continue to develop this technique over time. So what's the data look like? Well, thus far, after a 1-year gap, that is 1 year without deliberate retrieval, the lowest recall score I've obtained was 76%. Now that may not sound impressive, but keep in mind forgetting curve would predict that you'd only remember 20% after 7 days. 365 days later, I've managed to retain, somewhat impressively, 76% on some of my own internal tests. So what is this technique, how does it work, and could it be of benefit to you? This is the beauty of the technique. I believe that it will be able to translate into every single person's life, and from my perspective, every learner should be using this from the earliest time point that they're able to start learning, because that is by design how this technique is going to give you near perfect memory for a lifetime in theory. But more on that in future content. My main purpose of this video is to give you some proof of how effective this technique actually is. And to really hit this message home, you'll notice with most YouTubers, when they claim to provide the fix for attaining better grades on exams or a solution to enhance your memory, it's always a matter of, here's the technique, try it out, good luck, or here's the technique, this is how I use it, good luck. Here's the technique, I got this grade, and therefore it works. But there's never a live demo. They don't take some new information and try and study it. They don't actually show you how this technique works in live time on their own situation. I mean, obviously we can't take cameras into exams, or maybe we should be able to take cameras into exams so we can film this. Curious. Leave your comments if you think that should happen. But to achieve this, I've set up a very simple experiment. I set a goal. I was like, okay, on a weekly basis, I educate students within a classroom situation. And it's a wide variety of topics. One of the party tricks that I would like to be able to perform is to produce all 120 elements from memory without notes or AI or augmented reality glasses or in-ear AI plugins or biochips or any of that fancy stuff. Just pure human memory using my technique. And I've done it. This video is the showcase thereof. So get ready, fasten your seatbelt. We're about to go through elements 1 to 120. The last 2 are theoretical, but I figured I'd maximize the challenge difficulty, and we'll see how well I fare. "101 to 120, all done." Numbers 1 to 20, all done. 21 to 40, no problems. 41 to 60, absolute breeze. 61 to 80, still relatively easy. Well, fingers crossed we got 100% recall. You can check, hopefully it's close, 95%, I'm happy with that. So how? How could we do this? Could you do this? I mean, that did take quite a bit of time, but being able to retrieve it purely from memory is very powerful because you don't have to memorize the elements of the periodic table. I just did this for fun as a cool teaching trick, shall we say. But the ultimate question resides back on you. If you could take any information that you deem important and systematically add it to your memory, with a little bit of strategy, you can encode it for a prolonged period of time, potentially forever, or at least that's my goal. Would you do it? Would you want to do it? What would you want to memorize? Would you want to memorize everything you've ever studied, or would you only memorize the things that are really important to you? Would this be suitable to match up with digital technology? Can you combine it in with your AI companion? Well, most of those things are still under development, but for the time being, I am using a writing tablet when I use this technique. By not doing in a linear string, I definitely made it more difficult for myself, and that's where the errors would come from. But if I had to recall in a linear string, it's not even difficult, because they literally build into one another, kinda like the periodic song. But the ultimate test is to be able to take this fundamental string of information and then to build upon it. And this is really important for our memory. You're probably familiar with schema theory, the concept that everything we learn attaches to something we've already learned. Okay, so with all this said and done, I can't just leave you out in the cold. So let's give you a taste for how you could memorize this information. If this is our table, and I've already informed you that this table is not 100% accurate, so keep that in mind, but the best thing you can do if you have to memorize a vast amount of information is to begin by segmenting the information. And in this case, I isolated out 20 elements when I first started, and I did actually publish that video on YouTube, so you can check it out as well. But I took the first 20 elements and I mapped them out. At the time I used a circle, and within this circle I divided it up into 20 segments. So that's something like that, and I compared it to a clock, which is where I got the idea from. If we look at the standard 12-hour clock, we do have a very relatable structure, but what is quite impressive about this is that we often remember the 4 time points quite well. Within a clock, you can very quickly tell what the time is just by remembering where those numbers are. So applying this logic, I transformed it into a, should we say, 20-unit clock. I mapped out the elements like this, and through retrieval practice, and I guess this is the point where you may want to make some notes, which techniques were required. Well, you're probably familiar with spaced repetition. It can only be understated. This might be the most important factor when it comes to engaging long-term memory. So if you want to add things into long-term memory, you have to use spaced repetition. It is a weakness for a lot of people because we have poor time management. We have to plan our schedule in accordance to at least 4 to 5 retrieval sessions. And indeed, even with MemTHOLOS, I have to do 4 to 5 retrievals to ensure the information is stored in long-term memory for a long period of time. That is critical. To also give it a boost, I use mnemonics. Now, if you don't know what mnemonics are, they are among the oldest of memory techniques. The process is very simple. I guarantee you know a whole bunch of them already. The first one that comes to mind, Mrs. C. Gren. The test for if something is a living thing. And note the C, if the C is not present, fire is a living thing. Test it out. Now, mnemonics unlock a vast volume of information through giving you a predictable string of information. The string itself helps you to retrieve the key information, so movement, respiration, sensitivity, control, growth, reproduction, excretion, nutrition. And there are many others and different versions. This would be the keyword mnemonic, where we take the keywords and zip them together to create something interesting. The periodic song, as an example, also falls under this particular system, where it's a music mnemonic. taking a song or the lyrics of a song and encoding that into memory. So mnemonics are powerful, and I would absolutely suggest, regardless of what your current memory process is, that you use mnemonics. And together, those two are already highly effective. But there's a third incredibly powerful technique, the Feynman technique. Now, the Feynman technique is very simple. Once you've encoded information into your memory, you need to retrieve it, and the best place to retrieve it is under circumstance where there is pressure and external expectation, and when you're not in like a calm state of mind. If you're able to retrieve it under pressure circumstance, say for example in a class of 30 students, while teaching, that is proof of true retention and long-term memory, especially if it is retrieved naturally and easily. If you need prompts or cues or some sort of paper, then you don't have it fully locked away in memory. You don't fully remember it as well as you could. So Feynman technique, teaching it to someone, breaking something down incredibly simply. Richard Feynman put it really well. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough, and I guess that was paraphrased from Einstein, who was probably also quite famous for saying so. Now, another technique that is incredibly important, and I feel like the practice run that we just did actually showcases the power of it, it is past papers. There is no better way to enhance your ability to retrieve information other than trying to practice test papers that are given to you as a resource online. Now, most assessments will give you practice papers. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of investigation online to find these past papers. But past papers are incredible, and I would absolutely recommend that you use past papers. Now, one that's a bit unusual, and this is more of my own recommendation, is that of YouTube videos. The reason being very simple. Creators spend an astronomical amount of time to create perfect videos. In this process, they try and package the information in a simple and concise manner, visual, engaging, informative, and interesting. All of the conditions required to help information get encoded. And sure enough, a lot of students actually remember more from YouTube videos than what they do from a class that might be an hour and a half. That really speaks volumes. YouTube videos are incredibly effective, a really good way to learn. And trust me on that, you can think back the last 10 YouTube short videos that actually taught you something, you probably remember at least one of them, maybe more. And one of the most important techniques, if not the most important technique, because I feel like even my technique is based upon it, memory palace. Memory palace is one of the most powerful memory techniques. It's also coincidentally probably the oldest memory technique in existence, originating with Simonides of Kos, dating back to ancient Greece. Now, in his circumstance, a little bit of a morbid situation. You could definitely read up on that story, but long story short, a building collapsed. He managed to identify fallen individuals, even though he was a guest at the event. Just through retrieving where the individuals were seated, he managed to recall all of the people who were present, and they were able to identify the bodies in this tragedy. He became famous overnight, kind of like blowing up in the modern age, going viral, and that technique has been passed down since that initial instance, and it probably is, at least from the modern interpretation, still the most powerful technique that we use to memorize information. And sure enough, I cannot deny it, the 120 Elements did employ a version of the memory palace, but I upgraded the memory palace to make it even more powerful. So, what is MemTHOLOS? MemTHOLOS is an archival system that takes information that you want to learn, very carefully arranges it into a memorable structure, and it employs several strategies to enhance the encoding, strengthening your ability to recall, and unfortunately that's going to be covered in a future video. Hopefully you enjoyed that one. I'll see you on the next video.